Our next reader is Stephanie Knipper. Stephanie lives in Kentucky with her husband and 6 children. She based her debut novel, The Particular Miracles of Antoinette Martin, on her own experience raising her daughter with severe disabilities. She is currently working on her 2nd novel. Please welcome Stephanie Knipper.
Well, I'm sure you all heard me say I've got a little timer on my phone here, so I'm going to get that set up so that I don't go over. But as Emily said, this is my debut novel. It's through Algonquin. It's The Peculiar Miracles of Antoinette Martin. And the title character, Antoinette Martin, it's a fiction book, but I based the title character, Antoinette, a lot on my daughter, Grace. It's the story of 2 estranged sisters who come together and reunite to care for one of their daughters, Antoinette, who is on the autism spectrum and has some severe disabilities. But Antoinette also has a rather unusual ability. She can temporarily heal anybody. And what Antoinette wants more than anything in the world is to heal her mother, Rose, who has peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is a pregnancy-induced heart condition. What I'm going to read for you today is the section that I typically read. Antoinette's character was based a lot on my daughter, Grace. And I'll talk about that a little bit after I finish this excerpt. But we adopted our daughter, Grace, from China in 2005, unaware that she had several severe disabilities. Our daughter, Grace, is on the autism spectrum, has developmental delays, seizures, and a whole host of other issues. And this scene that I'm going to share with you today is probably, in the entire book, the one that is based most completely on an experience that I had. It's based on the time I took my daughter Grace to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and she was formally diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So this section is from her mother's point of view. Her mother's name is Rose. The waiting room at Cincinnati Children's Hospital's Department of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics is too small. Children are everywhere. Some shove beads through a wire maze bolted to the floor in the center of the room. Others bounce on their toes, hands curled against their shoulders, as if afraid to touch anything. One boy stands in the corner, banging his head against the wall, while a woman, his mother, tries to hold him still. I can't watch. Antoinette sits on the chair next to me, bouncing. Her small green coat is folded over the armrest. She is 3.5. Her feet don't reach the floor. To bounce, she pushes against the armrests, lifting herself out of the seat. Then she lets go. Gravity does the rest. It took 3 months to get this appointment, but now that it's here, I want to be somewhere else, anywhere else. This morning, Dad held Antoinette as he paced the kitchen. She arched her back and groaned. In the past 3 years, he has grown soft around the middle, and most of his hair is gone. He puffed as he tried to calm Antoinette. "What do you want, sweetie?" he asked. He is big enough to wrap his arms around her twice, but Antoinette is difficult to contain. "She wants to get down," I said. After scheduling this appointment, I started making lists. The first time Antoinette walked, the first time she crawled, her first bites of solid food. There had to be something that would prove she was normal. The lists were in my purse somewhere, but I needed to find them. "We can cancel our trip," Mom said. They were attending a commercial flower growers conference in Missouri. It was the first weekend in December, and a light snow had fallen. Antoinette rocked back and forth in Dad's arms like a metronome. I found the crumpled pages on the bottom of my purse and flattened them on the kitchen table. "We'll be fine, Mom." Antoinette shrieked. "Just put her down, Dad," I said as I dumped everything back into my purse. As soon as Antoinette's feet touched the ground, she toddled over to me, her gaze locked on something over my shoulder. When she reached the table, she buried her face against my knees and wrapped her arms around my legs. Then she sighed with contentment, as if I were her whole world. Now, in the waiting room, she sighs the same way and stops bouncing. She leans into me, and despite the pressure building in my chest, I smile. She's happy. That has to count for something. Finally, the waiting room door opens and a nurse in pink scrubs says, "Antoinette Martin?" I pick up Antoinette's green coat, take her hand, and follow the nurse out of the waiting room. As I walk, I remember the last thing Mom said to me before they left. "You're still her mother. Nothing can change that." But that's exactly what I'm afraid of. What if I can't mother a broken child? Someone painted blue and yellow fish on the walls of the exam room. White bubbles float from their mouths to the ceiling. All of a sudden, I'm Lily. I count the fish, 5. Then I count the bubbles, 17. Not good. My chest tightens and I slip a nitroglycerin pill under my tongue. "Is she always so tactile?" Dr. Ketters asks. She is at least 60. The gold buttons on her purple dress gap about the middle, and 2 inches of white slip show beneath her dress. Antoinette sits on the exam table, scratching her fingers across its surface. She laughs at the sound her fingers make. Her green coat is next to me. It's so tiny. Dr. Ketters stands in front of Antoinette, studying her. She hasn't listened to Antoinette's chest or looked in her eyes or ears. "She touches everything," I say. That must be normal. Kids grabbed things. "I have lists." I gave the crumpled sheets to the doctor. When she walked, what she eats, textures she likes. Dr. Ketters glances at my papers, then puts them aside. Does she make eye contact? Like a magician, she pulls a pink feather from her lab coat and waves it in front of Antoinette. Antoinette ignores it. She looks up and to the left. She stares at paintings for hours, I say. I stopped painting after Antoinette was born, but I still have my art books. Antoinette and I flip through them at night. And music. She loves music. The nitro pill has dissolved, but my heart still hurts. Dr. Ketters jots some notes in Antoinette's file. She has been in the room for less than 5 minutes. When she looks up and smiles softly, I know something is wrong. Antoinette displays a lot of autistic behaviors, she says. She's not classically autistic. She's affectionate. Right now, Antoinette is leaning into me, lacing her fingers through mine. "You don't see that a lot in autism," she says, "even though it's a spectrum disorder and people can be anywhere from high functioning with Asperger's syndrome to severely impaired." With the words "severely impaired," her eyes slide to Antoinette. I nod as if we are talking about the weather, but I don't want to hear anything else. I set Antoinette on the ground, ignoring her upraised hands. I gather her green coat and hold it out to her. "Thank you for your time. Come on, Antoinette, put your coat on." Antoinette flaps her hands and pushes the coat away. Dr. Ketters continues as if I haven't said anything. "I can't give an exact diagnosis. She doesn't fit neatly into any one category, but I can tell you that she will most likely require lifelong care." Please stop talking. The pressure in my chest grows until I think it might explode. I shake the coat at Antoinette. "Antoinette, let's go." Is her father in the picture? The sympathy in the doctor's voice is painful. Finally, I drop Antoinette's coat and shake my head. I'm dizzy with grief. It's just me. Institutions are nicer now. Caring for her by yourself is going to be hard. I lose my breath and I feel something crushing my chest. Then I feel a small hand in mine. When I look down, Antoinette's eyes are closed and she's humming. She hasn't hummed since last September, and I realize how much I missed the sound of her voice. The pressure in my chest eases. Her touch has always made me feel better. When I pick her up, she closes her eyes and rests her head on my shoulder. Dr. Ketters is still talking when I walk out of the exam room, but I'm not listening. As we leave, I think of the second list I made, the one I didn't show the doctor. On it, I listed the way Antoinette's fingers clasp mine when we walk in the garden, the way my heart beats easier when she is next to me, the way she taps my back, and I know it means I love you. Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. I will just give you a tiny bit of background because everyone always wants to know more about the fact that I have 6 kids and that they are, 5 of them are children we adopted from China with some varying special needs. So, as I said, I based the character of Antoinette on my daughter Grace. She is our second child. We have one biological child, and we had him first. But Grace is our first adopted child, and we were unaware that she had the disabilities that she had when we traveled to China to adopt her. She was listed as a special needs child, but her need was listed as a small heart condition that had already been corrected, and it had, and her heart is fine, but it's everything else that she struggles with. It wasn't until we arrived in Nanjing, China in December of 2005, and we met Grace as a 22-month-old, should have been toddler, that we realized something was very wrong. She was 22 months old, couldn't hold her head up, couldn't sit up, couldn't walk, she couldn't speak. She's 13 now and she still can't speak. She's in diapers. She relies on us for all of her needs. So it was a very difficult time in China because this was not at all what we expected when we got to China. And we actually had to make the decision whether to bring her home or to leave her in China where she would be labeled as unadoptable and likely die. So after we got home and I adjusted to parenting this child that I felt completely unprepared for, that took quite a while to adjust. But then I had always been a writer, so then I started writing this story. So I'll open it up for questions if anyone has any.
One just very practical question.
Sure.
6 children.
Yes, how do I find time
Yeah,
to
that's
write?
exactly
Yes.
right. What's on my mind.
That's what everybody wants to know. Well, it was easier, when I only had 1 or 2 kids, of course. But what I do now is, my writing schedule changes with the school year. Okay, so in the summer I get almost nothing accomplished except on the weekends or in the evening when my husband's home and we can kind of trade off. Right now though, my kids, I have 3 who have to be on the bus very early, by 6. So I'm up at 5:30, I get them on the bus, and then I have 1 more child to get on the bus, and then my kindergartner gets on later. I end up writing from about 6:30 or 7 in the morning until 9:30 or 10 each day. And that's what it is right now. It'll switch again when their schedule switches. What I do is set very small goals for myself because otherwise I'd get discouraged and I'd stop writing. So it takes me a little longer, but I get there. Other questions?
First of all, absolutely, God bless you.
Oh.
I have worked with autistic kids in the past, and I have worked around kids most of my life, and I'm a mom.
Yes.
So, I know how it is. But did you say you had a son?
Yes, we have 1 biological son and 5 from China. Yes.
How old is he?
He just turned 14 on Sunday.
So he's oldest. Who's the oldest?
He is the second oldest. He's our first child, but our oldest child she'll be 21 in October. But we adopted her from China when she was 12, almost 13. She's our 4th child, but our oldest child. Our family's a little bit of a hodgepodge, so.
How has he dealt with, has he been because I'm assuming they're all girls, the ones
No.
you've adopted? No?
We have 3 boys
Okay.
from China, but they have special needs. So, 2 boys from China, 3 girls from China. So we're like the Brady Bunch, Chinese special needs version. But we brought home our daughter Grace in December of 2005, and our son was born in March of 2003. So it was right before he turned 4, or yeah.
So he's always had
So
brothers and
so
sisters.
They're just his siblings. I mean, they love each other and hate each other in equal measure, so, yeah.
So there's that whole notion of, you know, art imitating
Yes.
life. I guess my question is, in terms of life imitating art, how has writing your novel informed your day-to-day?
Honestly, it's helped me slow down a little bit and raising a special needs child, especially one whose needs are so severe. I mean, my daughter Grace, she's 13 and still in diapers. She has seizures. Her needs are extreme. They're very extreme. She does not speak. She's a handful sometimes. And sometimes you can get wrapped up in that. You know, you can get wrapped up in all of the day-to-day, the physicality of caring for her, or sometimes the difficulty in caring for her. But then I sit down to write, and all of my writing, whether it's based on, I write fiction, but it's all drawn heavily from my own emotional experience, you know, write what you know, that type of thing. So when I sit down to write, I have to look back over what I've experienced and slow down and appreciate it. And so writing actually helps me appreciate where I am in my life more, instead of getting lost in all of that stuff that can be kind of heavy sometimes. I think I saw, did you have a question?
Well, this is probably an unanswerable question, which is, how did you have the courage to adopt more children after having this severely disabled child to care for,
Well, it's kind of a,
especially special needs
yes.
children?
Well, it's kind of a long story, and I know I'm running short on time, but I'm going to give you a very condensed version. But I'm always happy to answer more questions about any of this afterward. We decided on the special needs route at first because we were not supposed to be able to have biological children. We went through 6 or 7 years of infertility, had decided to adopt, not matched with a child yet though, and then surprise, I was pregnant. We were thrilled, put our adoption plans on hold, and then I had a very difficult pregnancy. My son was born 10 weeks early. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital. I was on life support, was supposed to have died. I actually did die, and then they resuscitated me. I was on life support, all of that. So had multiple surgeries due to Crohn's, all of that. And so after I recovered from that, and we started wanting to enlarge our family again, we had already decided on adoption. We were used to all the doctor's stuff now because of me seeing multiple doctors. So we thought, hey, we'll go the special needs route. We were expecting small heart condition, cleft lip, something like that, and we ended up with our daughter Grace, who is she is one of the most extreme cases of adoption that I know of in the international adoption community. It normally does not happen this way. But honestly, after we settled with her, everything else was easy. We just 3 years ago in May brought home our 2 newest children, one of whom is my son now, who he is 10 and he has spina bifida and he's paralyzed from the waist down. And honestly, after Grace, if you've got a child who can speak to you, everything else is easy. And you wouldn't think it, but it really is. And also in China, the conditions for people with special needs are atrocious. It's very bad. So once you know what's happening there, it's hard to just shut yourself off to it. Other questions? As always, I'm happy to answer questions outside of here.
Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.